Congratulations, you've made it this far. This is part 6 of getting started with web video. We're talking production. This is showtime. The adrenaline is pumping. And why wouldn't it be? We're here with Mark Johnson.
And Dave Thackeray.
It's great to have got this far. Almost a miracle. We covered audio in part 4. Lots of people will remember that. We talked about lighting in part 5. What happens now? We're ready to hit that red button.
Yeah, we did cover audio, but there's one thing I didn't mention which is worth covering, which is where you put your tie microphone or lapel microphone or lavalier microphone, whatever you want to call it. And the best thing to do is just count the buttons. If you're wearing a sort of a shirt, count down 3 buttons and just above that, between the second and third button. You don't want it too close, because actually if you put your head down you can actually hit it with your chin, or because it comes very close to your mouth it can become very boomy.
So clothing selection is important as well as the microphone position.
You do have to have a tie or a shirt. No, round neck sweaters. You do see people with them up here, and it can be done, but we're trying to keep it simple and keep it easy.
Great tip.
So get it, between the second and third button down.
Great stuff. So that's the microphone covered. We've got through that as well. Talk about the camera then, because it has to be a certain way, look in a certain direction. Obviously it has to be pointing at the talent first.
It helps if it's pointing at whatever you're wanting to video. So what we have done, we have just got a standard photographic tripod. We've mounted our video camera, and we can see that, I think, in one of the wide angled shots. You can just see it sitting here. It's not a particularly expensive tripod. It's just one I use for still photography. Little video camera on the top. Probably can't see, but we have got the audio cable plugged in, so we're not using the microphones on the camera. And that is situated just above eye line. So in this case, we're shooting at you. And if you have to just look up ever so slightly, don't you, to it?
Yeah, it's like the webcam we were looking at as well, wasn't it? Right back in the day, where you can look down and you've got the nasal shot, you look up and it immeasurably changes the picture. Yeah,
so it needs to be just above the higher, so just higher, and we can see that in that great shot, you can see that the camera is pointing at you, and it is actually just slightly higher than your eye line. So that's it. We've done the lighting. You see the lights in this shot, the lights that we play with in episode 5, I think it was, part 5. We've got the camera now. Just another view of where we're sitting, just so you get an idea. So it shows that we both have laptop computers, just to remind us of what we're meant to be talking about and the key things that we don't forget. And you can see in the top, there's a little sort of silver rectangle at the top, and that's actually a clock. It's a good idea to have an idea of how long you have been going for, because sometimes you can get carried away and you don't actually know how long you've been going for. So you need to pick a time, and this is a good point. You need to think about that. I want my show to be 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is, and start small. I would suggest
stick to it.
And it's better if you have lots of content. You're frequently better off chopping and then doing another show with the more content. Leave people wanting more, or leave people thinking that you know more and there's more you want to tell.
The cliffhanger, this is where TV really comes into it. I like that approach. And I also wanted to mention about the leads. You talked about the audio jack and the cable before. It's very easy for the floor to quickly turn into a mess, isn't it?
I mean, one of the reasons that, in this studio, we have everything up, so we can run leads up and across the grid. You don't have that luxury if you're just starting out. So you do have to be careful and make sure that you are aware, because you don't want to pull over a tripod with a camera on. It could get very expensive.
I suspect it may have been done before.
It has.
The leads and the clock, all part of a checklist, may be a good idea, because there are so many things to think about, and it's very easy to be overawed by the situation, isn't it?
We hopefully have stepped through things quite slowly and said, here's what you think about developing your content, this is what you think about for doing the lighting. But when it all comes together, it is very easy to overlook something. I mean, there are times when you won't have plugged the microphone in. There are times where you forget to press record, or have you checked that the camera has got enough recording capacity? Because it goes on to record, and you're talking for 15 minutes, but after 2 minutes it was full and stopped recording. So developing a checklist with just some basic things. You might think they are simple. You might think that pressing record is a very simple thing. Everybody, I tell you, everybody in the industry forget to press record from time to time. It is one of those things, even though in here we have red lights, etc., that tell us when things are happening, you can still forget.
Doesn't matter, does it? If you're a driver, it's mirror signal maneuver. If you're a pilot of a commercial jet, you've got a checklist.
Big checklist.
If you've got a Zoom H4n recorder, you've got to press the damn thing twice for it to record. So important to be prepared. We've covered it, and we can't reiterate enough just how important it is to practice, to rehearse, to be planned, ultimately to be prepared, because you're on show. You've got to know your stuff inside out. It doesn't matter. Don't think about the tech, think about the content, because it's the content that shines through.
And it is important to try and forget about the lights, is to forget, or talk to the camera as if you are looking at somebody, and you'll get the hang of it. It can be a bit daunting. You might think, oh, this is a bit stupid, I'm sitting here in front of these lights, etc. Don't worry about that. Look down at your notes, your content, relax, and just focus.
It's a great tip. We've talked about the content. We haven't really covered in this session the call to action, which, again, we've already mentioned that. People do overlook that, as they do overlook the importance of presentation and preparation.
The number of times you get to the end of something, you think, I made it through all my 7 points and I didn't know anything, and you just say, bye! You don't say...
Thanks, Palm.
You say, for more information, look at www. whatever. You don't give them that call to action, and leaving people with a call to action, even it could be, don't forget to watch our show next week, or whatever it is. Go to the website, whatever the offer is, have that and don't forget it. Print it in bold on your show notes.
If it was something like Wayne's Flags, and we have covered that briefly, he would have produced that as a standalone show, so it's not as important to foster interaction with the audience through his call to action. But if you are thinking maybe this is going to repeat itself, or we're going to produce a second show, then that call to action, as far as tweet us, tell us what you think, or have you got ideas for us to share on the show, that's another really good way, isn't it, to foster a relationship with your viewers.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter, go to the website, send me an email. There are all sorts of things that you can do, but just make sure you put that call to action at the end.
We've recorded, we now have various little segments we might have cut a couple of times. We now need to think about putting it all together, don't we, before we publish it. So what's your advice to people as far as the producing and the editing of it goes?
Couple of things there. First of all, you said we might have had a couple of cuts, so that means you might have recorded it in 2 sections. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes when you put them together, you need to make sure that if you were sitting up straight, at the end of one cut, you're sitting up straight at the beginning of the next cut. It makes it that makes the transition, the change from one to the other, less dramatic. But if you were sitting up straight in one, and then by the time you do the second one, you'd slouch like this. When you cut between them, it's very obvious to people. So if you do cuts, and it happens to everybody, you just need to try and remember where you were, what you were doing, that I was looking over there when we finished, or I was looking at the camera. So that's the first thing on the cuts. So we've now got all this information in the camera, and we need to edit it. We need to take the first 3 bits of video, add it to the 5th bit of video, and we then need to put some titles on the beginning and credits at the end. But you don't have to do that. We know we've talked about it, the titles and credits. It makes it look more professional, but you don't have to do that, especially when you're starting. You need to use your video editor of choice. So if you've got a MacBook, it's probably going to be iMovie, because that's what you have. If you've got a PC,
Windows Live Movie Maker is a great option to start with.
And most of them are done by drag and drop, and very simple. But we cannot cover video editing in this series. It's just impossible. It will be hours on its own. But there are places you can go. I mean, you can just do a Google search, iMovie help, or in Google or whatever.
Yeah, or YouTube is always your friend for things like this.
YouTube is a good one.
Talking video.
And
lynda.com as well, which will give you a 7-day free trial. Again, Google that for the latest offer, but they do have a range of videos and classes, exercises to help you to get right down to the nitty-gritty of your video editing package of choice.
Yeah. So in summary, I think then, we talked about before, we didn't mention it in this part, we should remove distractions, make sure the phone can't ring, the dog can't bark, etc., etc.
But adding to that as well, the continuity thing, we talked about that before, there might be little things that are actually distracting the eye of the viewer. So make sure that you've got a very clean background, that if you're going to do a couple of cuts, those two different segments, that you wear the same shirt.
Yeah. The other thing is a clock. Quite often people like having for some reason having a clock in the background. We have one in the back of the studio. It's great for when you're doing live shows. But if you're recording it in the background and it's 1:33 and then suddenly there's a second later it's 2:48.
People will notice, guaranteed.
People will notice, and a lot of people won't, but some people will, and they'll think, oh, it took hours just to record that one sentence.
Your professionalism is out of the window. Relaxing is so important as well, isn't it? And just getting into the vibe.
Absolutely relax. You won't get it right first time. We don't get it right first time. You do have to keep practicing, and that's, I think, the third summary point. Practice, play it back. When you first start, just record 30 seconds or a minute and play it back. Make sure the audio's there, make sure the video's there, and study it and think, would I be happy watching that, or is there something in the background that is distracting? And then just practice some more.
We did mention Wayne's flags, and just before we finish this part, I just wanted to let you know that a flag is actually this little box that slips on the bottom of a microphone, makes you look very professional, and really does add that finishing touch to when you're at a press conference or you're interviewing somebody with a shotgun microphone, particularly. Quick tip. But we've got the video together now, Mark. We're ready to unleash it on the largely unsuspecting public, but we want them to become very suspecting. So the next part, we're going to be talking about distribution and marketing.
That's right. So we've now taken the video, we've edited it. So what do we do with it next? And we're going to cover that in the next part.
What's got four sides and screams your name?